Yeah.
Is that what started you off on wanting to travel?
No, I don't think so. I think it was because my sister
Yeah.
and we went to the Bahamas. That was my very first trip and my
Um,
very first time on a plane. When you were younger, did you never have to do public speaking? Like, did you have to do presentations? Because that's how they
at
teach you
school,
that
no.
those skills in school. Like when I was a kid,
Mm.
you might be in history class and you're learning history, but then what they do is they'll say to you, okay, now we're gonna divvy you up a bunch of topics, and it helps the class to learn things about different elements of history, because history is so large now. You can't sit
Yeah,
in a class and learn the whole friggin' history. Even in 5 years, you can't learn the history of
yeah,
the world.
yeah.
So they divvy things up, and then everybody comes and does a topic. And at the same time, you're kind of learning some public speaking
When I was at
techniques.
school, we didn't do that at all. It wasn't something that was done within.
My topic, by the way, was the crash of 1929 that I was given. In the second semester or later in that year, I was given another topic to talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You know what? I was only 4 years old, but there's something in my head that tells me I knew or I heard about it at
yeah,
the time.
yeah, yeah,
So you do pick up the energy around you, even if you may not understand necessarily the concept of what was being said.
yeah,
I know I knew. Does that make sense?
yeah. When I was in when I was in grade school, I think I was in grade 5. That was probably my first time I needed to speak, and I had to speak in front of the whole audience, like the whole school. Or so they
Yeah.
had all the other grades up to yours come
Mm.
into the gym, and that's when you started to really learn public speaking. And they
Wow.
and they said pick a topic. You could put whatever topic you wanted. So I went downstairs to my father's enormous collection of National Geographic magazines.
Oh,
And I
wow.
looked around and I said, what do I want to talk about? And I was like, oh, and it was the 70s then. And I said, oh, that's what I'm going to talk about. And because I was on the front, and they had just were either they were talking about the discovery, and or because maybe it had been traveling around, but it was the treasures of Tutankhamun.
Oh,
So
yes.
what
Yeah,
I
they
had
came to
done was I
London.
had talked
Yeah.
about, who he was, and Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon who backed
Yeah.
him, and then of
Yeah.
course the treasures, and that was my first speech that I gave in grade 5 to the grade kindergartens to grade 4, or the grade 1s to grade 4, because I think in kindergarten you don't have enough attention span to be sitting in
Yeah.
the gym to people's speeches.
Going back to you looking at these Ge National Geographicals of your father's, is
Yeah.
that what started you off on wanting to travel?
No, I don't think so. I think it was because my sister, who at the time was dating somebody who had a bit of money,
Oh,
he actually had a sailboat, and she took me with her because I was a few years, maybe 2 or 3 years older, 2 or 3 years old. No, I'm going to say 3 or 4. I'm probably closer to 4 years older than her partner's daughter from his first
right.
marriage. This girl, Danielle, in
Yeah.
effect, is almost like my little sister.
Yes.
So he was bringing Danielle with him on vacation, and so Deanna brought me so that the two of us could, so Danielle wouldn't be lonely or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we went to the Bahamas. That was my very first trip and my
Um,
very first time on a plane. And then I
yeah.
think the second thing that sort of provoked my desire for travel was once I was in history class, one of the things you start to learn about is all these ancient wonders. So then I
Mm.
saw, okay, so they talk about, the Colosseum in Rome because you learn Roman history. You
Yeah.
talk about the pyramids of Egypt because we did
Mm.
Egyptian sort of part of history. You talk about the Parthenon in Greece because with Roman, you do Greco and then Greco-Roman kind of history, right? You talk about like
Mm.
empires and you talk about different things. Of course, I wanted to go to London because we talk about the British Empire, and then there's all these things to see in London. You got to go see Big Ben and you got to go see all the, you know what I mean? So I would have to say it was a combination of being taken when I was young
Mm.
and really and that's where I learned to sail too, was through that and whatever, and then being the history and wanting to see all of these things.
We didn't do that. We did British history, English history, because we have got a history.
Yeah,
But it occurred to me that in Canada or US,
yeah,
you only have 200 or 300 years history. You don't have
correct,
that 2000
correct,
year plus
correct,
history that we have.
correct.
So we just talk about English or British history.
When I was in grade school, one of the things I remember is learning about the British coming here and the French coming here to Canada
Hmm. Yeah.
and the feudal system
Mm.
and how and a little bit of indigenous what happened in that sort of thing. That's could have been many other things I learned, but that stuck in my brain. You're like 7, 8, 9, when you're about 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when I was, say, in grade 9, so you're about 14 years old,
Mm.
that's when we started to do like Egyptian history.
Oh,
Start
right.
to learn about Egypt
Yeah.
when you're about 14. And then when I was about 15, I remember it was very specifically related to understanding the Westminster system of government. And because that's our government, right, is based on your system. So we have a House of
Mm.
Commons, we have a prime minister, we have a governor general who is the king's representative on this land,
Do
right?
you have the equivalent of the House of Lords?
We do not have a House of Lords, but
Yeah, second chamber,
we
second.
have a second chamber. I'm not sure if it's called the Senate here or not,
Okay.
but we do have a second house. And then
Wow.
when I was 16, we did Greek and Roman history. And we did, when I was 17, we did World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the
Wow.
like all the key major things, right? And we go right up to present day things like, the whole, like I said, the 1929, right through to past 1940, up to the 60s. So call
Hmm.
it from the 20s to the 60s in the
Yeah.
capacity of major wars and all these major things that happened in the world. And
Mm.
then when I was 18 years old, which is like my last year before I went to university, because I was 19. When I was
Yeah.
18 years old in my last year of history, one of the things and I don't think they teach it anymore, but certainly I was kind of glad for it, was we had to do a little understanding a bit of American history
Okay.
because America has such a big influence, not just on the world, but very much
From
so on
Canada.
us because we share that border, which is the
Boundary. Yeah.
longest undefended border in the world. But obviously when I was in grade school, like when I was in, prime, like my first years of schooling. Obviously you learn the Canadian anthem when you're younger, right?
We don't do that. We don't
And
do that.
well, how do you learn God Save the King?
We never got taught it. I don't know.
You probably just heard it because everybody
We
sings it
heard
all
it.
the time and you just pick it up. But
When
we
I was a
don't sing it
child,
every day in school, or we don't
no,
sing it
no,
every day because there's no
we
like,
don't. No. When I was a child,
yeah,
at the end, say if you went to the cinema,
yeah,
at the end of a film, they
yeah.
would play the national
Yeah,
anthem.
see, we don't do that. We don't do
They
that.
don't
So
do
you
it
have to
now.
be taught it. And the bigger piece of it is
Mm.
our anthem is in two languages. So you have to learn both the English and the
I'm a
French. Like
French.
learn it as because you can sing it all in English, you can sing
Mhm.
it all in French, or the official one is half English, half French. So the first half of it is in English, the second half of it is in French. You know how there's certain learning that you just pick up from hear people
Absorb.
seeing an absorption. Exactly. It's because you are constantly singing that everywhere you guys go. I mean, you sing it like you said after TV, it's on the TV. We never had
It
a TV
was, yeah.
program ends and it ends with the
Yeah.
Canadian anthem. You got to realize the Canadian anthem didn't come into play until the 60s, first of all.
Uh,
We
well,
didn't have
the
our own
national
flag
anthem.
until
Yeah.
1967.
Wow. Oh, wow. You didn't have a flag.
And
The
you know how Australia kind of has still to this day
the Union Jack in
a
it.
Union Jack in it. Ours had a Union Jack in it too, but it had some red coloring, I think, as well.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly what it looked
Yeah,
like. Yeah,
flag.
sorry, I said 1967. I meant to say 1965. I think that's, oh yeah.
Close enough.
Okay. Here's exactly what it was. It was all red.
Yeah.
In the corner has the Union Jack.
Yes.
And then it's got like a crest, like what like a family crest looks like, that
Yeah.
shape that kind of goes down like that. And there's a number of
Yeah.
things in that thing. So I think in
So
the
like a
bottom
shield,
of it
isn't
was
it?
three maple leaves.
Oh, okay.
There's a blue portion with the fleur de lis because of the
Yeah.
French. So it's kind of like three layers. So the bottom layer of it is
Maple leaves.
the three maple leaves on a branch. The middle
Oh,
layer, and that's white with red. Then the middle layer is the blue and has the fleur de lis and it has something else and it kind of looks like a harp or something, but maybe I'm out to lunch.
yeah.
I don't even know
That
what it
sounds
is.
very British, actually. The
Well,
fleur
that's
de
the
lis
French
on the heart.
portion. And
Is
the
it?
British portion is above it is the crown and it's got some things. I'll show you a picture. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull up a picture.
Hmm. Yes.
So
Yeah,
you
it is
see,
the
here's your
rampant. It's,
Union Jack.
yeah.
The whole thing was red. There's your
Mm.
maple leaf. This is your fleur de lis, and I don't know what the heck that is.
Heart.
It looks like a harp.
Yeah.
Again, this represents the French. This
Okay.
represents our individuality.
Yeah.
This
And that's
represents we're part of the crown, and those are those three lions and the thing. So at the time, this was part of
the
um,
British.
before the British came, when it was only indigenous people here.
Yeah.
Only indigenous people here. The first
Yeah.
people that came here was de Champlain.
Uh-huh.
Samuel de Champlain, and he came in the 1600s. So Canada
Right.
does, even though it's not a country, the first settlements in this country go back that far. That's why Quebec, the province of Quebec, is older than the rest of
Canada.
Canada because that's where it started from, was this province where I live.
Yeah.
So we had settlements here. In fact, Montreal, if you actually go to the port of Montreal, because that's usually where settlements start, right? All these guys, they
Yeah.
came in boats, they came to the
Yeah.
port, and then they started to settle from there. So if you go to the port of Montreal,
Yeah.
which is the oldest part of Canada. It's not in Quebec City, even. The oldest part of Canada is right here where I live. So this
Right.
part of Canada is over 450 years old. French explorers Samuel de
Yeah.
Champlain came from France and came obviously across the Atlantic into the St. Lawrence River, came down the St. Lawrence River. And as I said to you, Montreal is an island that sits in the middle of the
Mm.
St. Lawrence
St.
River,
Lawrence.
and
Yeah.
it has a mountain on it. But of course, it's
Mm.
all green, right? Because nobody's here except for the indigenous people at that
People.
time. And he
Yeah.
sees this mountain and he says, "Oh, that is such a royal mountain." Or,
Oh,
as you would say in French, mont, meaning mount,
right. Royale.
royal,
Right. Yeah.
royal, mont
Yeah.
royal. Or as
Montreal.
you Montreal. That
Montreal.
was the Montreal was the indigenous name. He sees this island, he settles there, he starts to do his whatever, he goes back to France
Yeah.
and he says, "Oh, we got to get a bunch of people coming here." Right?
Quick.
Because he just came here to explore it. Now he's got to bring some people, and he brings what are these men, which
Mm.
become known as the coureurs de bois. They're like the they're like the wood guys. They come
Wood. Yes,
there and
well,
they
yeah.
bring their, and they realize, oh, we got to do what we call a portage. They bring their little boats and they carry them with them in the things, and then they put them in the water and they go into the lakes, and then, oh, they pick up their boats and they carry, and they settle,
Red. Yeah.
start to settle the land. But now you've got a whole bunch of men. So how do you get a population? You need men and women.
Women.
So when
Yes.
Samuel Champlain goes back again, after he's got all these men settling, he
Yeah.
goes back to the King of France and he says, "We need some ladies."
Women. Yeah.
And the king sends over to Canada the women who become known as les filles de roi, the
The royal
daughters
children
of
of
the
the royal.
king.
The
And
king.
these
Yeah.
were a little bit more educated women. The coureur de bois were not very educated men, but these women were more educated in the sense they were educated by nuns because they were probably going to go into the nunnery. And they
Oh
say,
God.
"Hey, send them over." And then this is how you have the men and the women, and they start to populate here.